I'm Dr. Hayslett, and I'm here to talk to you about the 7/8 MITS-BOA audition. As for the scales, we have 2 octave scales, and it's marked that the minimum tempo is 80 beats per minute. I would recommend aiming for 80 to 90 to the quarter note. Be sure you're practicing your scales with the metronome, that's going to be your best friend, and with drones. So when you're going to practice your E flat major scale, for instance, be sure to have E flat as a drone to check your intonation. You can find that by searching on YouTube for cello drones and E flat, and that will bring up the cello drone of E flat. And those are a great resource for working on the intonation of your scales. As for the excerpt, I want you to check out the fingerings that I suggest here. Some of the marked fingerings are not as efficient as I think we could be. So here is what I would suggest. Let me go ahead and play through this to give you a sense of where we are. Now, as we look at this excerpt, there are a few things that we need to be aware of. So from measure 12, so think of it as just a little breath there, but you're not going to lift the bow on this one. And then the other one that they bring you attention to is in measure 3, with the tenutos under the slur. They want them smoothly with a slight enunciation, which means don't stop your bow. I want you to be very careful of that. You're going to keep the bow moving, and you're going to give just a little bit of extra weight. So we have beat 3, 4. So what that will sound like so we have each note delineated with just a little bit of weight, maybe a little bit of speed added depending on your cello, but we don't want there to be a stark pause there, and we don't want to stop the bow. To try that, I would start at the middle of the bow to the frog. That's where we're going to be traversing. That bow stroke is going to be much more difficult when you're out of the tip. So be sure in measure 3 that you're staying in the lower half. Now, our dynamics are definitely something that you need to look at here. We have forte and piano. Those are the only dynamics in the entire excerpt. So we have to be sure that our fortes are forte and our pianos are piano. To practice this, you want to go to each of the forte sections and feel the bow weight, the bow speed, the contact point that you're doing, and see if you can keep that relatively consistent between all of the similar dynamics. So with the forte, I would start and I'd play measure 1 and 2. And then I would go straight, I would take a pause, go straight to measure 5. because this is still forte. Then it drops down to piano. So our next one to match is an 18. And I'm going to stop about there because then we diminuendo down to piano. And now I'm going to go to my pianos and see, what am I going to change in my technique? I might want it to be piano, but if I don't change something specific, it's not going to happen. So I'm going to be going for a slower bow speed and less weight. I'm not going to pull the contact point up very much because that's just going to take the core out of the sound. So for my pianos, if we start in measure 3, and I'm only going to play measure 3 because then in measure 4 we do the crescendo. So measure 3 and then my next piano is in the middle of 13. And then it starts to crescendo again. And then my last note is piano. I know it's only one note, but I want to feel what that feels like, that bow speed and that bow weight. So I'm going to play that last note. And my goal is going to be to get all of those pianos to be consistent. Then when all of my fortes are consistent and my pianos are consistent, then I'm going to work on the crescendo measures. And I'm going to start from the piano, maybe do one measure of piano, do the crescendo, and then one measure of forte to see, can I get from that piano, which I know how it feels and I know how it sounds, and then gradually add speed and add weight to get up to the forte. Other things that I would suggest you look at, let's talk about the string crossings, except in measure 8. Now we do this once forte and we do it once piano, which is going to feel different. But the important thing is that we are doing these string crossings from here. We're not going to go from our elbow every time. Otherwise, we're going to end up just wagging our arm back over and over again. So we want to be rotating from our lower arm versus from my shoulder. So you can see this if you put your phone on the stand and put it in the camera that faces you. You will discover where you are using your arm and, where you're using your shoulder, and then where you are crossing strings from the lower arm. So that's going to be the goal. Getting those string crossings. You want to play your D string very close to your A. So I could play my D string close to the G, or I could play it close to the A. Both of these angles play the D string. So let me play it close to the A. And then when I transition to the A, I'm going to keep it close to the D. One of the major pitfalls here is to go from D string to A string that large, where in fact I could keep it very close between the strings and only have to move that much. So I'm going to practice that spot first by doing that with open strings. If I can play 3 measures of this, 1 and 2 and 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I can do that, then all I need to do is add my left hand. And to practice so I'm going to try and be able to do that 5 or 6 times in a row accurately. Then to practice my left hand, I'm going to do that in double stops. And I'm going to start in measure 8 in the middle. And I'm going to start in measure 9 at the beginning, because I'm playing a D string and an A string note, except for beat 4 in the first 2 measures. So instead of, I'm going to play them as double stops. And And the next one I can't play as a double stop because the note's on the A string. So I'm just going to play it on the A string. Then I have 3 more double stops. Then just the note on the A string. Then 4 double stops now. And if I can play those in tune, what I'm listening for is that my F sharps, my E's are in tune with my A. So for instance, if my E sounds like that, I'm too sharp. That's where it settles in tune. That's out of tune. So we want that fourth to be nice and crisp. And then the F sharp, I'm looking for that sound. If I'm too sharp, then we get that. If I'm in tune, and if I'm flat, then we get something like that. So trying to keep those double stops in tune. And by practicing measures 9, 10, and 11, I'm also practicing measures 14, 15, 16. One thing about shifting while we're on the left hand, we have a couple of positioning moments where we go up where our second finger goes where our fourth finger typically goes. For instance, at the very beginning. Normally I would think, oh, G on the D string, I'm going to play that with the fourth finger. But instead of going for that, I'm going to start with a 2. So I have to keep in mind, mental picture, where is that fourth finger located? Because that is where my 2 will go. When you play the E in measure 7, in measure 12, particularly those where we go straight to the E from the B, the way I'm going to find that note is I'm going to think of where my third finger C sharp is. I'm going to move my first finger there and then put down my 4. Because in my new position, my first finger is in the same location as my third finger of my old position. That's how I'm going to use my GPS to find where that fourth finger E is. Now I'm not actually going to play that. I'm going to lighten the weight in my left hand to come out of the string so that it is smoother. But that's how I'm finding this position-wise. And then otherwise, use your metronome. Do start it under tempo and work it up. Another way to do things is take one measure and do one measure at the goal tempo, rather than taking the whole thing and just clicking the metronome up little by little. That's a great strategy. But another tool for your toolbox is to take one measure, do it at tempo with a metronome, and see if you can do that measure 5 to 6 times in a row accurately. Then choose another measure at tempo. Some measures are going to be fairly easy to do. For instance, measure 17, that is going to be easier to do than the previous measure, measure 16. So some of these measures will take more time than others to do it at tempo. If you have any questions about this or would like to contact me, you can reach me at my email address, bryan.hayslett@mtsu.edu. And otherwise, happy practicing.